Welcome to episode 45, everybody, of Two Dudes in a Movie. I am Luke Parrish.
I'm AJ Ferguson.
And I'm Paul Tabling.
All right, so let's get right into it today. What have we been watching, everybody?
So I watched the Clone Wars episode.
I'm caught up now, so yeah.
I think it was the best one of this arc. Just has the most happening in it and some most
time, right?
development. Yeah, it's just been so slow. But I liked it better than the others. Honestly, I disliked Trace and Rafa a lot. And so it didn't really make much sense for them to be there because they end up just leaving. Like Ahsoka just leaves them anyway. So I don't know. It just felt pointless. But
I can't stand them either.
It just wasted. Like season 7, there's so much opportunity for Anakin and Obi-Wan and Revenge of the Sith and all that stuff. Order 66.
Yeah.
And they friggin' wasted 4 episodes doing this. I'm like, are you serious?
Yeah. I'm not gonna lie. It felt like a giant waste of time.
That's how I feel. But I don't know. There might be a huge group of Ahsoka fans out there who loved it. Maybe not.
Well, I mean, I'm a big Ahsoka fan, but like the sisters or whatever, I was like, between them, like they got dumber and dumber as the arc went on.
100%.
I was like,
dude, I saw
like, sure.
Yeah, for sure.
I saw a meme that was like, the title of it was most hated characters in Star Wars, and of course it's like Jar Jar and like C-3PO and like other dumb characters, and then it like Trace was on there. I was like, wow, that was quick.
Yeah, dude, like literally she deserves it. Like she was so annoying. Oh my gosh. But anyway, I watched that. I watched Quibi. Did either of you guys get Quibi yet?
No, not yet. Dang it.
I did not.
Okay, so the show I was watching, the Most Dangerous Game, where he has to like survive for 24 hours.
The Chris Hemsworth one.
Yeah, that's Liam Hemsworth and Christoph Waltz. And okay, so that one's on episode like 9 or something, and it's gonna be over Friday. So Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, we'll have the 3 last episodes. Now I'm excited. That show is really good. I've been enjoying that a lot. And then there's a new one out that I think you guys will like called 50 States of Fright.
Scary?
Sam Raimi is the director, writer, and producer.
Oh, nice.
And he's taking the scariest true stories that have ever happened in all 50 states and turning them into like little episodes.
Oh, that's cool.
And so there's one. The first one was in Michigan, and the second one is in Kansas, and that's as far as I've gotten because they come out in new episodes every day. So that's as far as they've gone. But they're not like overly creepy and scary. So if you're like easily frightened and like you don't like horror or whatever, like I'm not a big horror fan, so I thought I'd give it a try and see how actual like horrific it is. But it's not that bad. There's some jump scares and there's some creepy stuff that happens, obviously, but it's good. I think you guys will like that show too. Those are the only two shows I've watched on there, but I recommend both of them. They've both been really good.
I'll check that out for sure. That sounds really cool.
It's pretty cool. And then it's new episodes every day, and every episode's less than 10 minutes. So it's super easy access. It's on your phone. You can watch it real quick. Some of the episodes are like 5 or 7 minutes. They're really, really short. Kept watching Parks and Rec. We're all the way to season 5.
Nice.
I'm trying to think which episode we just watched. Watch the episode where Anne wants to have a baby. And all the different people like come and interview for who she wants to have a baby with or whatever. But that's the food poisoning episode whenever Ben and Chris and Ron get food poisoning from the
mini calzones. Yeah.
And Ron is like, I think I've voided more weight than Tom's entire body or something like that in the last couple hours. And he says he broke the bottom of the toilet bowl. And they're all like laying on Chris's floor, just like dying. Anyway, I've watched Parks and Rec. Love that show. I started a new show called Confession Killer on Netflix. Have either of y'all heard of it or seen it?
No.
Nope.
Okay, so it's based on a true story in the 80s. This guy in Texas gets caught for murder, and they go to court. They convict him of murder. The judge looks at him and says, "Do you have anything else to say for yourself?" And he looks at the judge, the murderer looks at the judge and says, "Well, what are we going to do about these other 100 murders that I've committed?" And the judge kind of turns around and freaks out and is like, "What is happening?" And so the guy just kind of starts smiling creepily, and they take him off and they start interviewing him, and he starts listing like names and dates and places of all of these other murders that he's committed.
Oh my gosh.
And he just starts confessing to all of them. And over time, it becomes so ridiculous. There's so many murders that there's just no way they're all true. And so this journalist comes along and he starts investigating them as the police kind of find them. But what's happening is every few murders that he makes up, there's one real one buried in there somewhere. And so it's just really crazy. It's a true story. I've only watched the first episode or two.
How many episodes?
It's really interesting. I think it's only 6.
Okay.
Really
like
short.
An hour?
Yeah, about 45 minutes. Really interesting. Crazy story. Like, I didn't know it was a real story, but it's nuts. And then I watched the first episode of Making a Murderer because that show was like super popular for a while.
Yeah.
And I just turned it on. I was so bored. I couldn't get into it.
It didn't pique my interest.
I never watched it. Yeah,
I just watched the first one and I was like, So that's when I went and watched Confession Killer because it was more interesting and I liked it better. So, and then last night, Callie and I watched Dunkirk. Because obviously, it's one of the main things that happens in Darkest Hour is the evacuation at Dunkirk.
Yeah.
And so Callie had never seen that movie before, so we watched Dunkirk.
Oh, nice.
I love that movie, but it's also really relevant to what we're talking about tonight. So I wanted to watch that.
Yeah, for sure.
But that's what I've watched.
Nice. All right. I'll give what I watched. So you guys remember what I talked about in What We Do in the Shadows? That show the movie that Taika Waititi was in. Well, a show version of it came out last year on FX, and they did like a 10-episode season, and the new season comes out literally tomorrow. And so it's all on Hulu, and so I'm watching the show version. It's all different actors, but it's like produced by Taika Waititi, and Jermaine, one of the guys from Flight of the Conchords, and so they're doing a show version. It's all the same style of jokes and humor, so it's like a perfect continuation of the theme of the movie, and it's my kind of humor. I think I said Taika Waititi is one of my favorite directors, so I mean it's kind of right up my alley.
Yeah, dude.
But to continue with the Taika Waititi stuff, I watched one of his movies from 2016, Hunt for the Wilder People. Have either of you guys seen that?
Yes. Weird.
I've heard
movie.
of it.
With the old guy, was it Sam Neill? Is that who it is?
I think so.
And then the kid from Deadpool 2.
Weird freaking movie.
But yeah, was it the kid's like in foster care, and they take him on, and then he gets lost in the woods, and the old guy's there with them, and they're being hunted down because they think they have him for the old man kidnapped them. Danielle and I really enjoyed it. We thought it was pretty hilarious. She said it was one of her favorite movies she's watched in a while.
Wow.
Yeah, so we were big fans of that one. And then I watched Zombieland Double Tap.
Oh, what'd you
Was
think?
it as good as the first one?
It was not as good as the first one. I mean, it was okay. I think Zombieland's one of those movies that doesn't need a sequel because the first one was so solid.
Yeah. Well, and it's like what? I mean, how else can you? I mean, you really can't expand that much on what's already happened.
Not a whole lot, yeah. And so, I mean, it's something that didn't need to be made, and it wasn't like great, but it wasn't bad. It's just as if you want some more like Zombieland world building, I guess, to watch that.
Right.
But yeah, it was okay. And that I think is all I've watched so far. Yeah, that's it.
Nice. So only movie I watched this week was the movie we're going to be talking about.
Darkest Hour.
It was Darkest Hour. I also am watching Parks and Rec. Just watched the episode called The Fight. But it's the one where Ann and Leslie get drunk off of the snake juice and fight.
The snake juice episode.
Oh, the snake juice episode is
classic.
So good. That's one of my favorites. One of my favorites.
It's a great one.
We did not get a chance to watch any more Community this week, unfortunately. We watched the series finale of Modern Family. That's a show we watched. We watched all the way through.
Wow. That was on forever, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's
like 11 seasons.
Yeah.
Dude, it's so good. I love that show.
It's a great show.
something in every episode makes me laugh.
Who's your favorite character?
It's probably either Jay or man, I don't know. Phil is good, but I think it's Jay is my favorite character. I like Mitch and Cam.
Do you know who Caleb Wall is, Paul?
Yeah.
So he's like a video guy in LA. He like does cinematography and all kinds of different stuff. And he actually worked on Modern Family for a while.
Yeah, I think you told me that.
He was the one who shot all of the like little side like interviews.
Yeah.
And he said that Phil was by far the funniest, by far the best.
Yeah. Phil's good.
Yeah, he's such a great character.
But yeah, so finish that up. A couple other shows we're, watching live and everything, or like Brooklyn Nine-Nine. I don't know, AJ, are you caught up on Brooklyn Nine-Nine?
I'm on season 6.
Oh,
like dude. Episode like 19 or something like that.
Dude, this season is funny.
Is it season 7 right now?
I think so, yeah.
No, I haven't seen season 7 yet.
Yeah. But what I've been spending actually a lot of time doing is, and I kind of want to start maybe doing this with what we've been quote unquote watching, is I've been playing a lot of Assassin's Creed Odyssey.
Ooh, that's a good one.
So I've probably already put 15, 20 hours on the game in like a week. Dude, I love it. I love the Assassin's Creed games. They're so fun.
Yeah. Odyssey's really good.
That's what I've heard, and I like to play through them all before I get to the new one. Even though this one's been out for like a couple years, it seems like now.
Yeah.
But I've actually played through a few things. Like I finished Pokemon Shield, and then I did Uncharted 4, and now I'm on Odyssey. So
ooh, Uncharted 4 is good.
Uncharted 4 was really good also. So, but yeah, that is all I've been watching / playing this week.
Oh, nice. I guess I have one more update. So remember I told you guys Blade Runner was based off a book? Well, I read that book. I finished it this week.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
What'd you think?
It was good. It is definitely not. I mean, it's pretty. It's not like an adaptation of the book. It's like it takes those themes and characters and does something somewhat similar but very different than them. The book focuses like heavily on like some of the religious practices that are around then, and like the inner like demons and the fighting, like internal conflict of the character of Deckard. Huh. And so it takes those characters, the bad guy's still the same, Roy Batty, and well, I mean, I guess it doesn't take him to do that. It is what it is. But so yeah, I finished that. It was good. The story really only takes place over about a day and a half, so it's a short read as well. It's like 224 pages, the book I have.
Okay.
Yeah, but solid read.
Interesting. Well, cool. Top 5?
So top 5s this week were top 5 speeches from movies. This one was fun. It was hard because it turned out like basically war movies and sports movies kind of is what it turned into.
Yeah.
I mean, those are the ones that have the most speeches. So yeah. I tried to include a couple that weren't necessarily in those categories, but
I don't have any sports movies.
Oh, really?
I also included good monologues.
Yeah,
I have 2.
Yeah. Okay, so my honorable mentions, I have 4 of them. First one is Rocky Balboa. The one where he's talking to his son in the street, and he says it's not about how hard. Yeah, it's not about how hard you can hit; it's about how hard you can get hit. Keep moving. Remember the Titans?
Nice,
classic speech where he rallies the team. He takes them to Gettysburg, and he tells them, basically to put their selfishness aside and become a team. Independence Day. Classic speech. Love that one. And then my other one is Good Will Hunting.
Oh yeah.
Have you guys seen this one?
Yes.
I haven't seen it, but I know which speech you're talking about.
So it's a very famous speech. Robin Williams won an Academy Award for this movie. And it's the speech where he's on the bench with
Matt Damon.
And he talks about how you can't imagine life beyond your little world that you exist in, basically. And he kind of rants at him for 3 or 4 minutes. It's a great speech. If you want to YouTube it later, it's awesome. But those are my 4 honorable mentions.
Nice. I have 2. Gladiator and Braveheart.
Nice.
Easy.
Nice.
So good.
Which one
So
from Gladiator? Very beginning?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Like, that and I don't know. He's got a couple good ones. The Maximus one,
I am.
Yeah, that one's good. The one
Maximus
beginning.
Decimus Meridius.
Yeah.
Nice. I have 3 honorable mentions. First one is from a movie you guys probably have never watched. I actually have never watched this movie as well, but I've heard this speech talked about so many times, and I've watched this speech so many times. It's from Glengarry Glen Ross, and it's a movie about, if I remember right, they're either real estate agents or car salesmen, and Alec Baldwin comes in, and he's like this big shot salesman, and he comes in and gives this amazing speech with, he kind of like cusses him out almost, and he's like, you guys aren't really salesmen. And one guy gets up and he's trying to get some coffee during the speech, and he's like, put that down, coffee's for closers. And so it's a good speech. I again recommend watching it on YouTube.
What movie did you say?
Glengarry Glen Ross.
Okay, I thought that was like an actor's name you were saying. I was like,
no, that's the movie title. It's got Al Pacino in it.
Wow.
It's a pretty famous speech. I'm sure if you listen to it, you've probably heard people quote it. Also, honorable mention is Avengers, the first one, where Tony is talking to Loki and says, "We have a Hulk." That's a good one. That's a good one.
That's a good one.
I also have the Braveheart speech where he, first battle. They'll never take our freedom.
Yep. Number 5 for me is The Newsroom. The first episode, the pilot, the first 5 minutes of that pilot, he gives this amazing speech on live TV in front of a packed audience, basically talking about how America is no longer the greatest country in the world. And he lists all these different reasons why. And then at the end, he kind of follows that up with hope that America can become the greatest country in the world again.
Oh, nice.
It's awesome. It's worth YouTubing. I think it's got 20 or 30 million views on YouTube.
Dang.
That's a lot, but it's awesome. It's one of the reasons that I was interested in watching The Newsroom was because of that clip that I'd seen. I'd never seen the show before, but seen that video before on YouTube. And it's awesome.
Very nice. Throwing a TV show in there. Nice.
Yeah. Had to. So good.
Nice. Luke?
Oh, my
falling asleep over there.
I started thinking about one of my movies. Saving Private Ryan, Tom Hanks speech.
Good one.
Yeah. That's what's hard. It's I feel like I need to sit here and list the movie, but about every movie I listed, I feel like is probably one of the most popular movies. Oh, except for one. I have one on here I'm kind of concerned about.
Yeah.
Hey, that's okay.
I'm not going to go into detail on it, but yeah, Tom Hanks.
All right.
And Saving Private Ryan.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Nice. My number 5 is from The Dark Knight. At the very end, where Commissioner, before he's Commissioner Gordon talks about the hero that we need.
Yeah.
And we're going to hunt him because he's the hero we need, but not right now.
Right.
Yeah, that's good.
Good stuff. Great movie. Love that movie. Number 4 for me is Return of the King.
Yeah.
Man, I love Theoden's speech so much. Whenever they come over the hill.
Yeah.
And I wrote down ×2 because Aragorn's speech at the end of the movie is also awesome. But whenever they come over the hill and the lights behind them and they charge down there, man, that's just such a cool scene. But his speech talking about how basically they don't care if they die and we're just going to fight, and we're going to fight for freedom for Middle Earth and everything. It's awesome. And then Aragorn's speech obviously is very similar, but both of those speeches are awesome. So I included that one on here.
Nice. Luke?
Oh, god dang. My number 4 is, have either of you guys seen Mr. Smith Goes to Washington?
Yes.
So
old black and white.
Yeah, from 1938.
Yeah,
Jimmy Stewart. Yep.
Yeah, but it's his speech to to Congress or not.
It's a good one.
He doesn't come from politics or anything, but he's basically coming in and saying you guys can come at me with everything, and I'm going to do the right thing and all this other stuff and make sure stuff gets done because politicians are all corrupt and whatnot, and he's the good of heart man, kind of come in there and do what's right and what's necessary. So very, very solid speech.
Good one.
So my number 4 is, all the other speeches are kind of like uplifting and like battle speeches and everything. My number 4 is from Pulp Fiction.
I had this one on my
Say What
list.
Again.
I had that on my honorable mentions list.
I love that whole scene from the moment they walk in the apartment door and Jules, Samuel L. Jackson's character, starts talking.
Yeah.
Big Kahuna Burger. All right. That whole scene till the end of that scene
Country
where
of
they
who
shoot
or
him.
whatever.
Yep.
Country of what?
Yes. Say What Again. Yes.
Yep.
Love that.
Yep. That's a good one. I almost included that one.
Well, there's Exodus one at the end.
Yeah. And then the whole Bible
Ezekiel.
verse and everything. Yep.
Yeah. The one where he makes the guy get his wallet out of the bag.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Number 3 for me is actually Darkest Hour. It's the movie we're going to talk about tonight.
Oh, nice.
And I wrote this one down because there's multiple speeches. Like all 3 speeches that he gives in this movie are all really good, and they're all relatively famous. Especially the last one is the most famous speech that Churchill ever gave, and I'm really glad that they included them in the movie, and they even kind of built the movie around them. And we'll talk about that later when we actually talk about the movie, but I wanted to include that on my list just because Gary Oldman does such a good job, and obviously Churchill's such a great speaker. So.
No doubt.
Number 3,
Luke?
Luke?
Got me again. Sorry, golly. What order do we go? That's 3 times in a row. I need to shape up.
Number 3, Luke.
My number 2 or 3, right?
3.
Yep.
It's the Remember the Titans Gettysburg speech.
Yes.
Yeah.
So good.
AJ, you had that in your honorable mentions, but for me, I like that movie. I'm not a big sports movie guy, but I think this is one of my favorite ones, and that speech, But I almost for me, it's weird because I don't take high school sports that seriously, and so to I don't know, it's different. I guess I have mixed feelings about the movie, but very good speech.
Yep. Good scene. My number 3 is also from a movie that's already been mentioned, but it's a different speech. Is the Aragorn speech at the very end of Return of the King, where he says, "Not this day."
Yeah,
dude, so good. Then they ride off into battle of a bazillion orcs.
Yeah,
the movie's too good.
Good one.
Too good not to have on there twice.
Yep. My number 2 is a movie called Patton.
Oh yeah.
Luke, have you ever seen Patton?
I have not seen Patton.
Dude, okay, so if you're going to YouTube any of the speeches that I'm going to tell you to YouTube, this is the one to YouTube. I'm telling you.
What's the one at the very beginning of the movie, right?
Literally, the movie opens. There's a giant flag, and this little guy walks out, and he just stands in front of the humongous flag, and he just starts ripping people left and right, and it is amazing. And it's literally 5 to 6 minutes long.
Oh my gosh,
it's a long one. Yeah,
it's incredible. But it's awesome. One of the best opens to a movie by far. One of the best speeches of all time. It's funny. It's mean. It's uplifting at the same time. It's so weird that he can literally just bash these people and then still inspire them at the end.
Yeah.
It's really, really good. Awesome speech.
Me again. All right. My number 2 is Independence Day.
Yes.
That is also my number 2.
Wow.
Dude.
All 3 of us had Independence Day.
Dude, that's so good, man. We will not go quietly into the night.
Yes.
Dude.
That's so, that movie, man, it's just for me, that speech kind of comes out of nowhere in that movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Just
it's not a very serious movie. It doesn't feel like it anyway.
Well, yeah, Will Smith and all that. And then all of a sudden they're just here's this, guy who's playing the president, and he gives one of the best movie speeches of all time. Yeah. That was crazy.
That scene gives me chills every time.
Good stuff. My number 1 is
Dark Knight.
Braveheart.
Oh.
Bro. Dark Knight, I almost put that one on there. It didn't really count as a speech to me, but I wanted to include it anyway. But anyway, Braveheart for me is literally, man, it's so good, so iconic for so many reasons. Just a great speech. It's one of the reasons that movie is so famous and so popular. But I love that speech.
People quote parts from that speech all the time, 100%. And just no doubt,
so
it's very ingrained into our system.
Yep.
My number one is actually one of AJ's honorable mentions, the Rocky Balboa speech.
Yes,
man,
so
I like the Rocky movies a lot, and that one, I don't know, Rocky is inspiring to me. So
yeah,
that speech hits me a little bit harder than I guess the other ones do.
It's a great one. Well, and it's so good because he's talking about himself, but he's also trying to help his son.
Yep.
Fire his son. It's really, it's great. Great speech.
There's a lot of history behind it too. So
yeah, for sure.
Very much so.
Paul, what you got?
So my number one is from a movie I know you guys have not seen called Boondock Saints 2. And there is a scene where
you're right.
They talk about how men build things, and it's just a big tough, kind of rah for tough men, and how there's talk about a bit at the beginning how men have kind of become a little frou-frou and things like that, and they're talking about men building things and things like that, and it just gets me every time.
Oh, Boondock! Who gives the speech?
It is actually, spoiler alert, it's kind of a dream sequence with Rocco. So he comes, the same actor comes back for a 2-minute clip in the movie.
Yeah.
And they all three kind of talk, and they talk about guys like John Wayne and things like that, and it's a good speech.
Nice.
Cool.
All right.
Good stuff. That was a fun list. I like that one.
Yeah.
Darkest Tower, Paul.
All right. So this week we're watching a movie called The Darkest Hour. Synopsis: in May 1940, the fate of World War II hangs on Winston Churchill, who must decide whether to negotiate with Hitler or fight on, knowing that it could mean the end of the British Empire. It's from 2017, directed by a guy named Joe Wright. Actors are Gary Oldman, Ben Mendelsohn, and Stephen Delane.
Lily James?
Something like that. It was the guy who played
Lily
Halifax.
James is very popular.
Oh, Lily James? Okay. I just grabbed the first three that are on IMDb.
Oh, yeah.
She's the one that types for him.
Budget of $30 million. Earnings of $150 million. So, not quite. But honestly, this one seemed kind of like a silent killer for me. I saw the trailers and I wanted to watch it, but it seems like it came and went for a lot of people. Sure. IMDb.
It didn't do great in the box office, but it did really well critically.
Yeah.
Because it was nominated for 6 Academy Awards or something like that.
IMDb rating of 7.4, Rotten Tomatoes 85, Metacritic 75. So pretty good little spread there. And then of course, Oscars for Best Actor for a Very Old Man, and Best Makeup was the other Oscar that it won, which is well deserved.
Yeah, and it was nominated for, I think, Best Picture.
Maybe I only wrote down the ones that it won. But good stuff.
So the idea / premise section. It's the first section we score the movie off of. For me, it was hard to score this section because it's a history movie, so it's all based on true stories. So it's hard to give it a lot of credit. But at the same time, it's you can't really take points off for them telling a true story because that's not really fair either. So I kind of went back and forth for a while. I didn't really know how to score this movie. But what I ended up doing is I just ended up trying to figure out how creative they were with the story they were telling. And I really thought it was really cool the way that they told the story in with different sides. By that, I mean, there's his personal side. There's the political side of all the people behind the scenes who are trying to stab him in the back the whole time. There's obviously the war side of things, how things are going in Europe. And then there's the other side of him literally by himself. The movie, he's completely alone pretty much the whole time. And so for me, I loved that was the way that they chose to tell the story rather than focus on one thing. Okay. So I gave this section an 8, but like I said, I felt really bad because I wasn't really sure how to score it. I also think the temptation with a history movie is to make it really long and make it about a long time period. And they really condensed it down to like a month. Actually, I think it's like 4 weeks or 5 weeks. But anyway, so I think for those two reasons, I gave it an 8.
Okay.
I think it was like in a month's time. I think it was like started like on May 4th or something or other, and then went to like the 20 something or other. So
yeah, it was like 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah. It was very, very crazy. So I rated it more kind of like what AJ was talking about at the beginning, because I resemble this movie a lot towards like Bohemian Rhapsody, Rocket Man, Jackie, kind of where it's about the one person, about what they go through, their business life, their personal life, and all that. So I rated it more compared to that, because it seems like there's been a bunch of those come out lately. So I give it a 6. But I definitely see what AJ was saying. I do like that they did cover like a month's time. I thought that helped it out a bunch. I literally wrote that down. I did like the short amount of time, because I think it helped with the pacing.
Yeah, for sure.
But I think it also made for some cool time, for some beneficial time jumps that they did, where they jumped from, because they pulled the big the date clock thing. Around. Yeah, that was rolling. That was a cool effect, by the way. Yeah. So 6 felt pretty good. Nothing.
So I see where you're coming from. Did you take points away from it for being a history movie, or more because of the style of movie, like you said, just being the individual person?
More for the style, less for like history. Like, if anything, I would have given it more for history, because I feel like we don't, like, this is something decently new feeling, especially coming from, the United States. You don't really see, like we have Patton, the one about like our heroes and stuff. You don't have something about the British war heroes. So I would have given points for that, but I took away a lot for kind of, it's come out around the time as, like I said, a bunch of these other ones, being Rhapsody, Rocket Man.
Yeah.
But interesting. Paul, what'd you give it?
So I agree mostly with AJ, but I do see definitely what Luke is saying. I gave the section a 7, mainly, again, for the history purposes, but I agree 100% with Luke's point of this is not something we as Americans know very much about. Like, honestly, other than his name was Winston Churchill and he was like bald and fat, I knew almost squat about him. Oh, and he was the prime minister. Like, as Americans, we don't really get that unless we dive into it ourselves. Like in our school history classes, we don't get a whole lot about Winston Churchill. So I gave it more points back because it was quote unquote new information for me. So
and that's one of the reasons I like Dunkirk, is because to a British person, Dunkirk is like the Revolutionary War story in America. Like, we all know the Revolutionary War history and George Washington and all the patriotism, right? We know those stories really well.
Yeah.
But to us, we don't know anything about Dunkirk. We've never even heard of it before until these movies come out.
Right.
But then, obviously, like, to a British person, Dunkirk is one of the biggest events in British history. So I think that, like you said, that's really cool for us to experience that in this way.
Yeah. And I'm definitely glad they did this. But yeah, as far as it being, because it's a history movie and all about one guy who, if a normal everyday British person probably would have known most of what was going on and things like that. So docked it to a 7.
Cool. So for character, character was hard too, because it really, it was Churchill. I literally put on my notes, I put Churchill, period. That's all I have. Like, I guess the king with Ben Middleton is a little bit in there. He's probably the next biggest character. I guess the two other guys, the Halifax and Chamberlain, who are kind of trying to stab him in the back the whole time, they're kind of there.
Lily James' character, she was pretty.
Yeah, I was about to say the typist.
She's more of like, but she doesn't do much. She's just kind of the audience's like perspective, if that makes sense.
Because they build her up at the beginning, like you think, like, oh, she's gonna be a prominent character, and then they kind of like they don't really spend much time with her. Yeah.
Yeah. And she's the eyewitness account. She's the one who gives us the insight into Churchill's life. Yeah. But it was hard because I wanted to take points away for the lack of other characters, but I couldn't, because Churchill's so good
Yeah.
So interesting. Gary Oldman is just friggin' phenomenal. I don't know if you guys ever seen any real footage of Churchill, the way he looks or talks or walks.
Yeah.
I mean, any of that sort of thing. But he freaking nailed it. Like, he looks just like him, walks just like him, the way he moves, the way he talks. If you didn't know what Gary Oldman looked like beforehand, you literally wouldn't have been able to tell.
Yeah, you can really only tell by the eyes.
The eyes,
that's the only thing that looks familiar.
That's about it. But if you don't know what Gary Oldman looks like, then you have no idea who that is. Mm-hmm. So I gave this section a 10, and I understand if you guys didn't. But for me, man, I just could not get over the fact that Churchill was so stinking interesting and compelling, and the way that he is completely alone, like literally. The scene where he's in the bathroom and he talks to Roosevelt on the phone.
Yeah.
And he like literally cannot help him at all. And in that moment, he realizes how alone he is.
Yeah. That was my favorite scene in the movie.
Oh my gosh. Like literally, he's so just by himself. He's the only person who doesn't want to surrender. All those pansies in the war room who keep advising him to surrender, to have all these peace talks.
Yeah.
His determination, his stubbornness, his leadership, his grit. I had to give it a 10. So I'm interested to hear y'all's thoughts, though.
Nice. So this section, like you said, it was very weird.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say, so first off, like, this movie isn't like my cup of tea, really.
Right.
So I was very skeptical watching this. I was like, man, like, this feels like it's gonna be very boring.
Mm-hmm.
Like, just like off the top, Danielle didn't even watch it with me because of that. She's like, no thanks. I was like, all right, well, here, I'm gonna watch it. And so I knocked it a couple points because of the lack of characters.
Yeah.
But like you said, Winston Churchill completely saves it. And like, so I gave it an 8. And I don't think I was wanting to go lower, but I'm like, man, you can't deny like how good Gary Oldman played him. I mean, that's cinematic elements more, but like, so he's seen, like, I don't know Winston Churchill at all. I think, like, but to me, like, it seemed like he played him perfectly. Like, tendencies, the way he talked, you know, he did the mumbling stuff. He, a couple times, did Winston Churchill have like a stutter or anything? A couple
he
times
mumbled a lot.
He mumbled a lot.
Okay. So I think he just played it perfectly, and I think that is what gives it an 8. I said, like, the antagonists they felt pretty plain Jane to me. They're just kind of wanting, you know, let's foil his plans kind of thing. Everyone in this movie is a bunch of losers. Like, all the politicians, like, golly, man.
Yeah, for sure. That's the thing is, like, that was why I struggled with it, and I understand where you're struggling with it, because there really isn't a bad guy. I mean, those two people are bad guys, but they still want what he wants. Like, they want to help Great Britain, obviously. Like, they want to help, but they're just coming at it from a different perspective. Yeah. And so it's just really, I agree, it was really hard to score this section.
So I think the antagonist was probably more of like ideals than anything.
Yeah.
Because
it's the whole like surrender, give in. I mean, that's more of the bad guy than any individual.
Right, and they personify it through those politicians.
Right.
This movie for me, it's like, I was telling Paul before we started, I was like, I felt pretty solid, but then every section, now that you sit down and think about it, it's like, it's very strange.
Yeah.
But no, I think an 8. I mean, I agree with your 10, AJ, but like, I think an 8 feel pretty solid.
And that's the thing is, like, I see where you're coming from. And if I'd never seen this movie before, or if I didn't know much about Churchill, I probably would have gone where you're at. But I'm a nerd and I like history a lot. Obviously, my dad's a history teacher, and Winston Churchill's one of my favorite characters in history. And so I'd seen all of his speeches and seen all of his, you know, documentary footage and whatever before this movie comes out. And so then I go to the movie theater and I literally sat in my seat as the credits are rolling, and I could not believe it. Like, literally, it was Winston Churchill on big screen, and it was amazing. So that was just, for me personally, that's just kind of a fanboy 10.
Right.
That makes sense. Very biased. I'm totally admitting my bias for this section. Paul, what'd you give it?
Well, I am not a huge fanboy like AJ is, but so to say that is to say I did not have a biased opinion, but I also gave this section a 10. Dude,
Wow.
I agree wholeheartedly. So I watched this movie for the first time maybe like 6 months ago, maybe a little more, and I really enjoyed it then. But then it made me want to know more about like Winston, even just like to know like so many little details in this movie, and it's more of maybe a plot thing, but like the Luftwaffe, like they mention it 2 or 3 times.
Yeah.
And when I first watched this movie, I was like, what are they talking about? And it's the German Air Force.
Air Force, yeah.
And so like afterwards, I watched a bunch of like more documentaries of like World War II and things like that, rather than just watch the, typical like Saving Private Ryan and things like that. But so I learned a lot more, and then did watch a few other Winston Churchill things. And so again, watching it this now, I think it was only the second or third time I watched this movie, to really agree with AJ and like the very iconic picture of the V for victory thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's such a famous photo that they put in the movie. I love that they put that in there.
Yeah, but just and I don't know, it is weird. I agree, because it really is of like, okay, am I rating Winston as a character or how well Gary Oldman played him?
Yeah,
and it's a little bit of both. But I do feel like they portrayed him well and made a good character for you to love. I do like some of the other characters. Like I like the King, King George, which I didn't realize.
He develops the most. Like if we were going to talk about character development, like his character develops the most. And Chamberlain does a little bit too, because at the end he waves the thing, the handkerchief.
He like wipes his brow.
Yeah. Sorry, he didn't wave it. He wipes it. Yeah.
Yeah. Chamberlain was good. Didn't care for him the first time, but learning more about the history, he was better, things like that. But I didn't realize it was the same. I've never seen this movie, but it was the same King from the King's Speech. Because I was like,
same character.
It's the same character, yeah. And I was like, because he like stutters and everything.
Yeah, he's a terrible speaker.
It makes me want to watch that movie now.
Yeah, Ben Mendelsohn did a great job with that character, because he's so awkward. He had like a lisp and he had a stutter. Yeah.
Well, and I think the guy who played Halifax even did really well too, because he had like a little bit of a speech impediment too. But I did really like the typist's character as well, and even like his family, his wife's character was good.
Yeah, the wife was interesting for sure.
To have that like flip side of the coin, and like that whole little thing with the family of when he gets voted, whatever, to be prime minister. Yeah. And chosen. Yeah, I don't know. But and she like talks in front of the family like, I always knew we'd be second to his political life or whatever. And I was like, man, so crazy. But tough, 10. 10 felt good for me.
Okay. That's good. Okay, plot. So for me, the plot was hard because I knew a lot of this story. I knew a lot of this history.
All these sections, man.
Dude, like literally, this was a really hard movie to score.
It's tough.
Because I'm so biased. Like, this is one of my favorite movies of all time. I mean, this is in my top 15. Like, I love this movie. And it's one of my favorite historical characters, one of my favorite time periods. I've watched every documentary there is in World War II. There's a book over there. I would go get it, but I'm attached to the computer. It's like literally like 2,000 pages, and it's Winston Churchill's personal memoirs of World War II.
That's cool.
Dang.
And I'm currently reading it, like 400 or 500 pages into it. But like, I just love World War II, and I love this time period, and I love British history. So for me, the plot was the hardest section to score because it's not super great in the movie, but it's not terrible either. So I said there's a little slow, moments throughout the plot. There's never really a twist or a turn, which again, it's history, so it's like there's kind of hard to
what's going to happen
throw in a plot twist. But they did a good job of revealing. Like, if you didn't know what happened at Dunkirk, they did a good job of like leaving you in anticipation if you don't know that story.
Or like the men at Calais.
Right, the Calais. That was cool. I didn't know that story before this movie. I didn't know that was a part of this of the Dunkirk escape until the movie came out. But for me, the plot really ratchets in there at the end, the last 30 minutes from whenever he goes on the subway. From that point on, the plot is really, really strong, really solid. So I said solid ending. solid movement from point to point, but there are slow moments in there, and there's really not much, I guess, up and down, if that makes sense. It's kind of a slow burn, all towards one. Yeah. So I gave it a 7. I felt like I could go a little higher just because I liked the movie, but I ended up kind of fighting that urge, so I dropped it down to a 7.
Okay. I also gave this section a 7. This movie for me is one I feel like I think you somewhat hit on it early. You can either give this a high, like any section in here, you can either give it a really high score or a really low score depending on who you are.
Right.
So this movie did a few things I liked. They did a lot of show don't tell. Which was really good. They showed a lot of like the pieces from Dunkirk. And like he didn't have to sit there and explain stuff, it felt like, because they were showing you it. The pacing was good for me like halfway through. So I was really into this movie for like the first hour. I was like, all right, this is cool. And then there was probably about a 45-minute section where I was just like, ugh. It started to feel like a walking through a swamp or something. I was just like trying to get the other side. And then you get to the other bank, and then you have the last 20-30 minutes, like from whenever he jumps out of his personal car, gets on the subway, and then does the speech on the end. Then it started to pick back up again. But man, I'm not gonna lie, that 30-45 minutes was pretty rough for me.
Well, and it's hard because I was thinking about that same exact section that you're talking about, and it's hard because that is the section where he begins to feel completely isolated, completely beaten down, and so you have to show that on screen. And I thought they did a good job of that, of showing his isolation, showing his kind of frustration with the situation. But at the same time, it was like, man, I felt like it lasted a little too long. So I'm on the same page as you are.
No, it did for sure. Because that's where you had the King's like character development happening, where he sits down beside him, and probably my second favorite scene where he says like, "You have my backing," all that. Like that was really cool.
Well, and he says the only person that we have who's going to scare Adolf Hitler is you.
And
he says, "Well, are you still scared of me?" He says, "Oh, a little." Yeah, that's good. I love that scene where he's in the bedroom.
Yeah, no, that was good. I do think just this is more terms of character, but I think Churchill kind of saves the plot himself, because there's moments that definitely could be slow, that definitely could be boring, that definitely could lose your interest. But I think him as a character helps save it, and he's got like some, I want to say, quirkiness to him, to where you're not really sure what he's gonna say next, or like what's gonna happen with him.
Well, he's so emotional and he's so fiery. Like he just can't even, like, he doesn't think before he talks. He just goes.
He's kind of unpredictable.
He's witty and he's funny. Like the time when he comes out of the bathroom and he says, "I'm coming out in the state of nature."
And it takes her a second. She's like, "Wait, oh crap, run!" Well,
in the privy seal, he says, "I tell him I'm sealed in the privy, and that I can only deal with one."
one
one side at a time. Yeah. It's so funny.
That's good.
My last point, I guess, is like AJ kind of said, the plot was very simple. Like I think it was predictable because it was history, and I think you can kind of tell what was going to happen by the end.
Right.
But so I mean, I think a 7 for me felt pretty good. I think that's what you scored it, right, AJ?
7. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good score for that.
I agree. It's also a pretty good score because I gave it a 7 as well.
Nice. Nice.
The whole, like, it felt like it was, I guess technically it's building to the speech at the end and things like that, but it felt like this movie didn't, the whole up and down thing, I don't know how to explain it either, AJ, but like it doesn't really feel like it moves as a story.
Well, it
felt like a very flat, just like
very slow burn.
Kind of storytelling arc, if you will. And it interests me because I think in one of our conversations, however long ago, you said there's supposed to be like a sequel or something, like, and that's totally what this feels like, is that they're trying to ramp up for another movie or something like that.
They didn't plan for it that way.
Well, that's what it feels like to me.
But it was so popular that they've thought about it, and it's not even confirmed. It's just basically it's Gary Oldman was so good, and everything else was so good that they just talked about it, because why not let one of the best actors of our generation perform more of one of the best characters
portrayals
in history. Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's just kind of what it felt like to me, and I guess maybe I don't know. Like after remembering you saying that, and it just kind of, like I said, felt like that. But yeah, very flat, nothing super going on. Yes, where he gets on the. I love that scene where he gets on the underground and is talking to those people. And it seems like that's another very famous thing that he did afterwards a lot. It seems like he started to do that more. If I remember right, maybe I'm like completely pulling that out of my butt, but it's such a good scene to where he actually talks to the people, because it brings back like a moment at the beginning where he, like his first radio address, he says I'm usually the one who tells them the truth, and I just lied to them.
Yeah. Well, that was one of the things that I loved about the plot more than anything else, was really the plot tracks with his decision-making process, because he has so many hard decisions to make throughout the movie.
Yeah.
Like for Dunkirk, for example, do you send in your fleet of ships and all of your air force and potentially lose all of your army, all of your navy, and all of your air force? Or do you just leave the troops there and see what happens and save your military, the rest of your military, for what's obviously going to be coming, is when Hitler tries to invade the UK. And so that's one of the hugest decisions in World War II history, and obviously all in world history. And he, sends the civilian fleet instead. But yeah, I totally agree with you, Paul. I think that's a really good point.
But yeah, so 7.
Any other thoughts on plot?
No, that's it for me.
Nope.
Okay, conflict, tension, urgency. This one was fun for me because I felt like the conflict was so good and so strong.
Yeah.
Inside of Churchill, his internal conflict is so good. And you can see it on his face. You can see it in his decision-making process. You can see the little moments where he gets kind of rejuvenated and re-excited about what he's doing. And then the times when he's beaten down, he just feels like he literally has nothing else he can do. There was good tension, but it wasn't really held. It was more built over time.
Yeah.
So I just said good tension building. Like they built tension through different situations. And the urgency for me was really present constantly because of that calendar, that clock moving forward. And then obviously the Dunkirk situation created a lot of urgency because you only have a couple of days until the Germans completely wipe out the army. I gave section an 8. It didn't do any of those things other than conflict extremely well, but the tension and urgency were really solid, really good. They complemented the movie. Like Luke said, and like Danielle said, I guess, the movie looks boring and it sounds boring. And if you don't have tension and urgency in a movie like this, then people are just going to fall asleep. So it wasn't outstanding. Like it wasn't to the level of like A Quiet Place or whatever. Obviously, it's not that kind of movie, but it does a really good job in those categories for a history movie. So I gave it an 8.
I gave this section a 7. Obviously carried by the conflict, like you said.
Yeah.
Some of that he created on his own by filling his whole war cabinet with his enemies, pretty much.
Yeah, no joke.
Right.
So, and that also built some tension. But yeah, conflict was very strong throughout. Tension for me, it felt like you had that with people and moments. It was there with his enemies in his war cabinet and everything.
Well,
with King and
the scene in particular that I'm thinking of is the one where they're trying to get him to say that he will not have peace on the record, and the guy's standing there with a pencil.
Yeah.
And he just says, "Well, will you actually come out and say this?" And he starts to figure out what's happening, and he asks everyone else to leave, and he just like wrecks the guys.
Yeah, that was good. That, and then urgency for me, I think this is kind of like, I see what you're saying. Like the urgency was built by time passing and everything. Like for me, it was like, I see that, but I don't feel that.
Yeah. It's the weakest of the 3 for sure.
Yeah. So I think that's kind of what knocked a few points off for me. Intention knocked off a point, but conflict definitely carries this section.
Yeah, no doubt. Paul?
Yep. So I agree. Conflict was great, both internal and external. Obviously, yeah, he's quote unquote fighting the whole other party that's wanting him to do one thing. Does he talk to Hitler? Does he keep fighting the internal there? Tension, yeah, really only tension is in that one scene for me where like you're talking about AJ, where he figures it out and he kicks like everybody else out and he just wrecks them just and dude, just because he at the beginning he says nothing, he kicks everybody out. He walks around to the other chair, lights his cigar, and like just looks at him, and I'm just like, "Whoa, that dude!" Like
what's funny is in that moment he's not Winston Churchill yet. Like he's not famous yet.
Yeah.
He's just the guy that they all chose for this job that they think is going to get fired.
Right.
To us, he's Winston Churchill's like, holy crap, But to them, it's like, well, what is happening? Like, because we're both more powerful than you are, or at least we feel that way.
Right. Yeah.
So I thought that was really interesting too, because Halifax is the one who turned it down, right?
Right.
So in his mind, this whole time, he's like, "This job should be mine. I could have this job, whatever." And he turned it down for whatever reason. But
and then for me, the only other, and I think it may have even been in that same scene, how they kept bringing up the massacre at Gallipoli, that he was like Churchill like led or whatever, and then like how he ends up explaining it and everything. But urgency, I really only felt like in the second half of the movie, mainly because like he's trying to make the decision. He's trying to before once the whole Dunkirk thing really kicked off, that's when the urgency set in for me. Because I'm like, oh, we've got 3 days to get 300,000 men from France to here, stuff like that. That was really the only urgency thing for me. Let's see. Yeah, I just said good conflict, tension in moments, urgency in moments. So felt like an 8 was fair because the conflict was very, very good.
Okay.
Cinematic elements, I gave this a 10, and I wrote Gary Oldman, ... Like literally, if we're gonna make a list of top 5 performances of all time, like obviously Heath Ledger would be on there, Joaquin Phoenix would be on there, but like for me, Gary Oldman would be like to me, the two Jokers are not really in the same category as everybody else. Like they're that much better.
Yeah.
But then Gary, like that next tier down, like to me, this performance is in that tier.
Yeah. Like Gary Oldman is Sirius Black.
Is so good. Yeah, Sirius Black. But it's so good. Like he literally just kills it. And then on top of that, I said that the writing was really good. The cinematography was really cool. It does some really nice things. The music was good. Dude, the makeup won an Academy Award. So like, come on. The music was cool. The piano that they kind of used to build tension into certain scenes. But other than that, dude, like literally this section for me, it just came down to the acting. It was so good. It was just awesome. There were just really no flaws for me that were glaring.
Yeah. No, this was a 9 for me. So this is my highest rated section. Like you said, you can't deny his acting. Obviously won an Academy Award.
Yeah.
And that alone deserves like at least a 8.
Right.
The makeup, I think the makeup was kind of part of the acting. Like you take a good actor, but then you do the good makeup with the fat suit and everything.
Yeah.
And you think the combination of that really made this performance. Cinematography was cool. That some scenes that's particularly stuck out to me was like when they're in a Congress or whatever they're doing with everyone sitting there, and it looks like a scene of Harry Potter, like whenever they're about to judge somebody.
Oh yeah, sitting in Parliament.
Yeah, in Parliament, he's giving the speech. Like it's almost like they had a spotlight on him. Yeah. Like there's a skylight or something. The lighting in that was really cool. The shot whenever was it that castle or something when Dunkirk gets bombed and it pulls out of that hole in the ceiling, and then you see the bombs get dropped. Yeah, that was really cool.
Yeah.
The scene where he goes and sits down and talks to Roosevelt, they do a wide shot and they just kind of have him. They did a lot of like scenes where they'd set up a shot and they just have him move around within it. That was really good.
Yeah, there were a lot of running shots that I noticed that lasted for 50, 60, 90, 120 seconds that just kind of kept going.
Yeah.
A lot of walking or a lot of shooting across a room and letting things go in between
Mm-hmm.
The foreground and the camera.
I guess my only complaint or mixed feelings were the music is what I had mixed feelings about. So for the most part, it was good.
Right.
But then there's a few times I noticed it. And I was like, man, I am not digging the soundtrack right here. And I think those instances I think of when he's sitting in his car and he's looking out the window. I wasn't a fan of the soundtrack there. To me, it just didn't seem like it fit the moment or the mood or whatever. But for the most part, pretty good. And obviously, I give this section a 9. So I mean, bravo to them. Paul.
Yeah, so I gave this section also a 10. Mostly for Gary, obviously, like you both said, that's at least an 8 right there. I felt like the effects were good. There wasn't really any, like Age said, anything that was glaring. Like a lot of the shots, like I think of when he goes to France and it's like a aerial shot and they're like the big bomb craters in the ground. And then later that same shot when they're actually getting bombed, or that same scene, like scenery and everything. I thought that was really cool. Like those really wide and high shots. There were a lot of those shots where, like you said, like Luke said, when they bombed Calais, or when he's like sitting on the roof of Westminster, and it like zooms up to the it flies up to the sky. I was like, that was a weird one, but they did that a lot. The makeup was awesome. I mean, they did the full fat suit. I mean, even when he like AJ said, I'm walking out in nature, and like the bottom of his legs were even like
they're still fat.
Or I was like, that takes dedication right there to do like the whole suit.
Usually you can tell if it's a fat suit. Like you're like,
right.
Oh, man, obviously this one you couldn't tell. So I mean,
not
the
at
level
all.
of detail with those.
The other thing that I really liked was they played with light and dark.
Yeah, that was
really well because obviously the title's Darkest Hour.
Yeah.
And Winston Churchill was famous for, he says he naps at 4 and he says he works late. By working late, he means he works until like 3 or 4 in the morning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he was famous for staying up really late working. And so at night, whenever he was working, they did a really good job of like having him completely in the dark and then light coming on him somehow. The very first scene, very first scene that we see him in, whenever he's laying in bed lighting a cigar for the first time, it's a really cool scene. Whenever it's totally dark and all you can see is his face, like barely light up just a little bit. And then the scene where the king comes in and he's like just sitting in the dark by himself, and the wife pulls the light bulb, and he just like is just sitting there in the dark by himself. But anyway, that was just something else I thought of that I really liked about the cinematic element.
Yeah, no, I agree. That was my last note, was the like alone shots, quote unquote, where a lot of the shots, like in the bathroom talking to Roosevelt, after like he hangs up, it zooms out, and I love because they did it 2 or 3 times other places in the movie where like the room was normal, but everything else around it was black.
Right.
Or like when he was going up in the elevator from like into his house for the first time, the only thing that was like lit up was the elevator and him. The rest of the screen was black, and I thought those were really cool, a really cool effect. And the whole like Darkest Hour thing, I didn't think about that, but that makes sense. But it just made him feel so alone, because it's like you said, he was. Nobody really
agreed with him. The weight of the world's on his shoulders. I mean, literally, if the UK falls and loses, then like World War II is totally different.
Oh yeah,
for real. So it's like that's just a huge moment. I mean, anyway, okay. Total score for me is a 43.
Okay, I got 37.
Nice.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mine is a 42.
Nice.
AJ and I were the exact same, except on one section.
Wow. Yeah. What was it? The idea?
Yeah,
the first one. Yeah. That's awesome. Good stuff. I'm glad you guys like this movie. It's fun. It's a good one.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
I enjoyed it.
A couple of meta questions for y'all. You guys have any? Paul, do you have any?
I have one. So and I didn't think of any more. So hopefully you've got a couple of good ones.
Cool. Yeah, go for it.
Mine was, okay, so there were a couple of times where a thing that at first weirded me out, but the more I thought about it, I was like, there was a scene like when he first gets chosen as PM, he goes with his family and they appear holding a cake and they have gas masks on.
Yeah.
And then later, like when he's riding in his car, he sees like these kids run by with Hitler masks on.
Oh yeah.
I was like, what is the deal with these masks? And I thought about it, and because especially the gas mask scene, like right after that, there's no time for them to have took those off. Like all have to, and it made me wonder, like, is there something bigger going on here?
Coronavirus.
Exactly. I honestly wondered if he wasn't having like visions or like little like flashbacks or something.
Yeah, I noticed that because it almost pointed them out. It's almost like whenever you watch a cartoon or an anime, and you can definitely tell who the main character is because, or like who the focus is because everyone else looks so bland, and then all of a sudden there's just like this vibrant person. It's kind of what it felt like. I don't know. It was strange. I didn't know what to make of it.
Yeah, I didn't either, and I feel like there's a deeper meaning that I'm missing. And I the only explanation I could come up with was maybe like he had like a random flashback of World War One, with the gas masks on, and then like the Hitler masks, he like just saw a vision of Hitler kind of thing. But, I wanted to see what your guys' thoughts might be.
Well, so the Hitler mask thing to me felt relatively normal, because at that time, like people sold masks like that, and they wore all kinds of stuff.
Okay.
But if you combine that with the gas mask thing, then I think your theory totally makes sense that it could be in his head.
Yeah.
I like that, actually. I didn't think about that at all, but I like that interpretation.
Well, yeah, I mean, like I said, I have no clue whether I'm right or not, but I know
cool.
The first time I watched it, the gas masks thing caught me off guard, and then I didn't think about it, and then I saw the like Hitler version of like a Nixon mask on these kids, which I thought was really fun. But like, and then the second time I was like, man, this is really strange.
Well, and the gas mask thing is so funny because instantly, like the next shot, they're gone. Right?
Yeah, they're gone. Like
they're totally gone.
You would think there would have been like a even if they all took them off. One. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I was just like, man, this is
interesting.
Well, got it here. Hold on. But a lot of these, what it's saying is just like how good Hitler was at propaganda with the mask, like, and how like the higher society of England was kind of romanticized with Hitler a little bit. Not that they worshipped him, but they just thought he was cool. But yeah, I don't know. So there's reasons for it that I'm reading, but
I have a couple of questions for you. Some of them are quick ones. So what was your favorite best moment in the movie?
I said it earlier. My favorite was when he's on the phone with Roosevelt.
That was a good scene.
That's a good one.
Well, I can't think of a favorite like really good moment. My favorite like funny moment was when he meets with the French leader guy or whatever.
Yeah.
And he tries to speak French in his like super muddled mumbly. And I speak a little French and I like understood most of what he said. And the guy's reaction on his face, and he's like, maybe we should speak English.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
That's like I won't say that's my favorite scene. I really enjoyed I think my favorite is the underground scene where he goes on the subway. That's really probably my favorite scene.
Man, I love all three of his speeches a lot. But my favorite moment is probably whenever the guy, after he's already kind of scolded Chamberlain and Halifax, and they come back the next day or the next week or whatever, and they're having another meeting and talking about something totally different. And Halifax brings up the peace talks again and again and again in front of everybody.
Yeah.
And you can see Churchill just getting really frustrated, and he slams his hand on the table and says, "When will we learn our lesson?" And he says, "You cannot negotiate with a tiger when your head is in its mouth."
Yeah.
And then he slams the chair and he walks out. That's one of my favorite moments in any movie. But that movie, just to me, I love that because he's so right, and they're so like just idealistically thinking about this, and it's not going to work. Like you can give Hitler the whole planet, and the guy would still not be happy.
Yeah,
right. You can't argue with him, and you can't negotiate with him because you're literally getting dominated right now. So it's like, what's he going to negotiate with? Like, what do you have to negotiate with? So I love that line. I love that scene. How does this movie rank, in your opinion, against other history movies? Not necessarily like, is it better than any other history movie ever, or like, how would you rank this compared to other movies that are similar?
I mean, this is up there for me. I really enjoyed it, mainly again for it being something I knew very little about. I kind of rank this with Lincoln, to where I knew, we obviously all know Lincoln got assassinated, but a lot of the other stuff, well, other than the Gettysburg Address, a lot of the other stuff in that movie, like, we never really learn about, the amendment and things like that. Whereas, and so that's kind of the same category of movie for me. I mean, I won't say it's better than some of the other like war movies and things like that, but it fits well in that other category of movie that I still really enjoy.
Yeah. For me, like, I mean, I had said this earlier, but this movie really isn't like my genre. I guess I kind of classify this as like a biopic, I guess.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, for an example, like, I didn't like Bohemian Rhapsody like at all. Like, I didn't care for it. So, I think my whole thing is like, it's not my type of movie, but you can't deny like how good it is.
Yeah,
like, you absolutely can't deny that. So it's not in the top tier of one of my like history movies for me, but it is very good. And so I'll probably put it like second tier war movie if I'm tiering this. But it's very good.
Obviously this is kind of a quick one, but I guess does the fact that it's a true story help the movie or hurt the movie? Like, would it be just as good of a movie if it weren't a true story, or does it actually help the movie and make it better that it is a true story?
I think it helps it. I'm kind of going towards like, not knowing much about him. It helps it because it's cool to know that there was someone out here that was like this and put into a situation like where people thought he would fail. And then he ended up, changing a lot of people's perspective. He ended up, changing the course of the war in a way, just because of something he said a lot was his courage. So based off that, so I think it helped it. I think Winston Churchill, like AJ obviously thinks, is very interesting. I agree with that. So yeah, just knowing that there was someone out there like that, I think definitely helps it. Not being fictionalized, I guess.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. That's a really interesting question. I
like,
feel
hypothetically, someone just made the story up. Like, to me,
I would say it would
still a cool story, but it's not as good, I don't think.
Yeah, I would probably agree. I mean, yeah, if it was somebody coming up with, if you got Gary Oldman and again to do the exact same thing, I feel like it would be good still. But yeah, I think because part of it also, we all know Hitler. And so we, like, for me, a big part of this movie was like, he's so right because we know Hitler would never, like you said, would never negotiate. And
and he even says at the beginning of the movie, they start listing all the things that Winston Churchill's done wrong and made mistakes on.
Yeah.
And the guy says, well, he was right about Hitler.
Yeah.
And then the king says, well, even a stopped clock is right twice a day.
Twice a day.
Right.
And by that, he means that for 10 years in the UK, Winston Churchill's been warning the government, warning the people about how Hitler's crazy. He's going to try to take over the world. We need to be prepared. We need to be spending money on our military. And all of the British politicians thought he was crazy, thought he was just trying to stir up, excitement about another war, trying to make money and all this other stuff. And nobody believed him.
Yeah.
And then he ended up obviously being right. Because Hitler was crazy and he ended up trying to take over the world. So the other thing I just thought of is my other favorite moment in the movie is the very end. After he gives his speech, Halifax is sitting up in the balcony. And he says, what just happened? And then Halifax says he just mobilized the English language and sent it into battle.
Yeah.
That was cool.
It's just like, oh, dude, like literally Winston Churchill's only weapon was words. Like literally that's all he had. And he got the entire country and all the politicians to, kind of rally around him and fight and have that attitude, the never surrender attitude from using his words from those speeches. So anyway,
it was a very good motivator.
Yeah, for sure. So Obviously this movie is underrated, I feel like.
I'll agree.
To what extent would you say it's underrated? Like extremely underrated, or just kind of under the radar? What do you think?
Uh, Man, I don't know. I think it's like, to be extremely honest, like I don't think it's a story that a lot of people are necessarily interested in.
Yeah.
Um, Mostly
Well, you see
because
that the $150 million it made. I mean, it
yeah, I
made its
mean
money back and then some, obviously, but
yeah, but the box
history movies
office
just
wasn't
don't make.
crazy.
Yeah, history movies just don't make a whole lot of money.
No, yeah. So I think I don't know. I don't know. Not underappreciated. Maybe underappreciated's the a better word. Like just the thought of it is underappreciated. Like
Yeah,
a lack of care might be there. Like it might. I think it might be like a niche interest.
yeah.
Um, but I don't know. Like I'm glad it was made. Like no doubt. It kind of sucks that a movie that was, with the stronger performance from Gary Oldman and something this integral into pretty much history, like you said, this, could have changed. Like if England fell, a lot could have changed.
Right.
I don't know. There's a lot of importance this movie expresses, and I think it's, I think people should care about. I don't know. I'm just rambling. I just got a lot of thoughts, but Paul, go ahead.
No, yeah. I mean, I do feel like this movie is underrated. I agree that underappreciated, and it really does. It's like you said, history movies just don't make a whole lot of money anymore. With especially it not truly at its core being about American history, it's really not going to make that much money in America. I think most of its money was made overseas, which makes a lot of sense. But should this movie be more widely noticed? I think so. But is it going to be? Probably not, because again, most people in the country that we live in are very big on the country that we live in and don't really care about other countries.
Yeah.
And that's a really bad thing to say, but
it's true.
It's very true, because it's the whole America thing. Like, I'm a very big patriot. I love America and all the stuff we have, but I also appreciate a lot of other cultures. And, British culture is one that I've always enjoyed and things like that, but I don't know a whole lot of their history. And so for me, I really enjoy this for that reason. And there's just not a whole lot of people here like that.
2 more questions.
Yeah.
Okay.
One of them is about what we talked about earlier, kind of is your prior knowledge base before you watch the movie. So Luke, you said you knew like nothing going into the movie, right?
I knew he was a prominent figure in World War II, but that was basically it.
So how did that shape your view of the movie? Did it help the movie? It hurt the movie? Like, what do you think? Like, was it educational and entertaining at the same time, or was it one or the other more than the other? I like I said, I have no idea, because I was such a big fan before the movie ever came out. But.
I kind of wish I knew more about him before going in, because my opinion of Winston Churchill like flip flopped throughout the whole movie.
Yeah,
like at one point I was like, I don't think I like the guy.
He's a total jerk. Like the first 10 minutes of the movie.
I was like, I'm not a fan of him, and then it'd be like, he's pretty great. Like I like all this talk about courage and all that, and like he's trying to motivate all these like very passive seeming British people, and I kind of wish I knew more. I think it would have been beneficial for me to have more of a knowledge of him going through and being like, oh, like he's this way. Like
did it feel like, because like to me, like I said, I already knew a lot of the stuff, but it felt like there was a lot of like information thrown at you that if you didn't like have a prior understanding of it, or at least acknowledgement of it, then I felt like this movie wouldn't really work and really wouldn't make sense. But that wasn't a problem.
Not really. I think the movie did a good job of like connecting stuff through context clues, really, because they make like, so I don't know much, before Winston Churchill, like before this or after this, but like other characters, there's like the supporting cast made comments that kind of tuned you into how he was before these moments, and like obviously like how he was afterwards. He became this great leader, for like 5 years or something like that. And so I think the context clues were there to really help with that, but I think it would have been beneficial for me at least to know a little bit more about him beforehand.
Yeah.
Paul, you agree? I guess you knew more about it than Luke did.
Not much, to be 100% honest. Well, this time around I did. The first time I watched it, like I said, I knew he was the prime minister, and really all I'd seen of him was like in the stock footage of World War II stuff we see with like him sitting next to FDR and things like that. So I didn't know very much about him at all. So yeah, for me, I agree with Luke the first time. Not having known a whole lot, there were a lot of context clues. Like the very beginning where the guy is prepping the new girl, like to do the typist things like, all right, he likes all this stuff a certain way, double space, blah, blah, blah. He mumbles. And I mean, that was a big thing, like immediately, like to just, but like, the context clues really helped a lot, especially the first time. But I do feel like it is needed a little bit. To have a bit more prior knowledge beforehand. Because like I said, after watching this, I kind of went through a whole World War II stint and watched a bunch of documentaries of things that I didn't really know about. And like I said, I made the point with the Luftwaffe, the Air Force, the German Air Force. Like they mentioned that a couple of times, and you kind of get it with context. But I remember watching it the first time, and I was like, huh? You know what I mean? So I do feel like there are a few things that would be beneficial, things like that. So to help more with context. So I'm a 50-50 there. Like the movie does a good job of giving you the major points about what's important, but to have that, it's kind of like watching a Marvel movie, to be honest. Like you don't have to watch all of them to get what's going on in Avengers Endgame. It's helpful. That's kind of how I take it.
Cool. Well, my last question is, if there were a sequel, would you watch it / should there be a sequel?
I would totally watch it. Depending on the subject matter and like time frame, depending on what would depend on if they should. Like if it's picks up right where this movie left off, and like you would get the bombings of London, and maybe even get a bit more like, I'm not saying it has to be like an action movie, but if we get a few more like battle scenes, I would say yes, it would be. But I don't know, that might take away a bit from the core heart of what this movie is about, with being Winston Churchill. So I would watch it. Whether I would say it should be made is a maybe.
I don't think there should be another one, just because I think it's hard to do this type of movie, or this pace of a movie twice. Like Paul is kind of saying, like, or I just feel like it'd need to be more action, a little bit more actiony. Because I think I would start to lean towards the side of bored if it was kind of the same thing twice. It would just feel like a 4-hour movie, really. So I'm gonna say there shouldn't be one made. I think they should leave this, especially since they explained everything afterwards in the credits. Like
well, and that's what I was gonna say. Like, and the other thing is, I totally agree with you. Like, to me, there does not need to be another one. And honestly, the reason is because it's darkest hour. Like, this is the darkest hour. Is this moment in time?
Yeah.
Like the bombing in London obviously is bad, and it's pretty dark, and that that time probably sucked really bad, and it did for a lot of people for a lot of reasons, but it wasn't quite as dire or as hopeless as this 3-week period was. And so to me, you can't really recreate this movie with the history that we have to actually write the movie on. Would I love to see the next one? 100%. Would I go watch it? 100%. Gary Oldman want to do it? I'm in. Let's go. But you got to be careful in how you do it.
Yeah.
I don't really think you could pick up where you left off. I think you have to flash forward quite a bit. Not quite a bit. Like, I would say you'd have to flash forward to D-Day maybe.
Yeah.
Toward the end of the war, and then maybe even do a little bit of post-war Churchill. Maybe, but I don't think you could pick up where you left off because it's just not going to work. Because, like you said, it's not really. It's going to feel like one long movie, and that wouldn't work well.
I think there's a lot character-wise, or at least with Oldman. It almost, to me, it feels like it'd be kind of overstaying your welcome in a way.
Because the other thing is you can't recreate that. I mean, he did so well; it's just hard to follow that up.
It's almost like come in, do your thing, mic drop, and leave. Like for them to do it again, I think it'd be overstaying their welcome.
Yeah, I agree. I would totally go see it, but I agree. That's all I got, guys. I'm glad you guys liked it.
Yeah. It was good. It was one like I said, you can't really deny how good it is.
Yeah.
For sure.
Next week is The Tourist. We're gonna watch The Tourist with Johnny Depp and Angelina Jolie.
Yeah.
One of my picks. It's one of my. I think it was on my original top 25 list, but it fell out this last time. Still one of my favorites. It's really highly ranked in my opinion, or it should be. I guess we'll see what score I give it next week, but I like it a lot. So
a little bit more lighter-hearted, right?
Yeah, it's a little bit less dark and gloomy than this movie.
Yeah,
a little bit more fun, kind of an action adventure movie with a little bit of romance, a little bit of
like spy.
Overseas kind of spy-ish feel to it. So it should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, it'll be a good step. After this one put me in such a dark place for a little bit.
Yeah, World War II was not a great time. In case you didn't know.
Very true. But do we got anything else, guys?
That's all I got.
I think that's it.
All right. Well, that was episode 45, everyone. Darkest Hour. Join us next week for episode 46, where we talk about The Tourist. We'll see you then.